Welcome to the first match preview of the 25-26 season here on Stones TV and the Maidstone United podcast, where we look ahead to our first away game, and it's a trip to Tudor times where we face Hemel Hempstead. So the Stones played their final pre-season game at Cray Wanderers last weekend, Nigel. Some valuable minutes in the tank for the squad, including for some of those who haven't featured a great deal in the summer.
Yeah, I mean, we've said it before, haven't we? I mean, the result wasn't in our favour. But it, like you say, gave the sort of those players that hadn't got the minutes a chance to sort of get those minutes. And again, it's just about working on those combinations. And there were spells in the game where we looked defensively strong. And we can name him now. The trialist Nathan Harness considered his first goal, but you learn from those them things. It's better to make those mistakes now in pre-season when you're learning than this coming week and in the upcoming weeks ahead. So it's just again, it's just about fitness and getting minutes in those legs, isn't it?
So 4 players have signed up since we recorded the pre-season preview last week before the aforementioned Cray Wanderers friendly, starting with the goalkeeper Nathan Harness. As Nigel's already mentioned his name finally, his contract ended with MK Dons at the end of July. A solid, mostly until that last game, for pre-season for him. And as I say, glad to finally be able to speak his name, Nigel.
Yeah, I think he'll be a good addition to us. I mean, it's never easy being a number 2. We've discussed it last week, didn't we, in the preview with Lenny Holden. You've always got to be ready to come on. And he had a few league loans in the National League. His loan he had last year with Southend coincided with them playing Barnet. We were right in form, and he had a loan the season before that at Gateshead. But again, looking at some of the footage of him, he's like modern day keepers. Like he's got a mistake in him. He's young. He likes to play on the edge of his box. He's this sort of modern day sweeper keeper. But the reports that I've heard and they say the footage that I've seen, he's a good shot stopper and he does come for crosses. So, it's just about, knowing that he's the number 1, and he's never had that in his career. He's come through the Charlton ranks as well, and, again, just being the number 2 and just playing in the odd sort of like Papa John's Cup, whatever it was at that time, whatever sponsors they have, whichever season it can be. But, it's going to give him that good grounding to have a good, solid number 1 season. And, and we've seen, the likes of, Coverland and Alexis Andre Jr., there were question marks over them when they came in, wasn't there? Lucas, let's not forget, came off the back of that season where, he got sent off early season, never really got in the team at Chesterfield, had his problems at Port Vale, didn't he? Everyone was sort of like, can he stay on the pitch? Because it's never ideal having your goalie sent off. And again, with Alexis last year, with all his social media stuff and that, people would say, well, was his mind in it? And then come the end of the season, he's got 23 clean sheets and he's off to the Belgian second tier. So, we are recognised as a good club for goalkeepers. Hopefully that can continue, and he has a good solid season behind him and contributes to success for Maidstone.
Fingers and hands crossed. Forward Dejon Golding helped Elgin City into the playoffs last season in Scottish League 2. So another one who's impressed in pre-season. Your thoughts on him, please, Nigel?
Yeah, like you say, he's no one that's impressed, hasn't he? I mean, if you go on YouTube and you Google his name, whichever spelling you have, Dejon, because there seems to be about 2 or 3 different spellings of his name. But that goal right at the end of the season where he literally ran from the halfway line and beat 3 or 4 players and put the ball in the bottom right hand corner. But obviously it's what is it, level tier 4 of
4th division. Yes, it's still professional of sorts.
Of Scotland, and the defending left a lot to be desired. But he still did it. He still had the confidence and the tricks to do that, didn't he? And he's got that little bit of swagger about his game, and you can see that he's like the Maidstone as well. He said in his interview as well, it's kind of probably the same level as what the National League is. Maybe a little bit below, but it's still a professional environment, isn't it? You're playing for those points, and he's had that playoff heartbreak as what Maidstone have.
He's come to the right place,
Yeah, exactly. So he's got that little bit of fire in his belly, and hopefully he can be a welcome addition to us.
Indeed. So young fullback Sam Oguntayo joins, having played a full season at Chelmsford last time round. Happy for him to bolster the defence, Nigel?
Yeah, I mean, again, another, like we said with all the signings last week, if you look on paper, they're good players, It's like you come through the Charlton again, they're under 23 academy, so they've got a good reputation of producing good players. And, effectively, we signed Ben Brooks' replacement at Chelmsford, and then we signed him as Ben Brooks' replacement at Maidstone. So,
Getting typecast.
Exactly, but and again, Joe says it sometimes in some of these preview videos. It's always a good gauge if you look back at players on other teams' forums and that, and see what they're saying about him.
Yes.
And mostly they're positive. I mean, a lot of the fans were saying that Chelmsford they're somebody that they would have liked to have kept. I was under the impression that he didn't sign from this season only because he couldn't fit into their full-time model. So, maybe he's got some other jobs outside of work. With our 3 days a week training in the hybrid sort of system fits into what he's got outside of football. And if you look at comments of him throughout the season, a lot of them were saying that, he grew into the season last year.
Yeah.
It was an improvement on Ben Brooks at times, So that's good positive stuff. Obviously, they're not saying that now. He signed for a rival, It's like literally, we didn't want him anyway. But I mean, I say he's got good ground in there, and he's a good solid backup to Leo. That he's come in and he's had a full pre-season with us, and he's looked good as well. So it's that competition for places, which is what you need, isn't it?
It is. Jesse Nabwezi was the last of the 4 through the door. The young forward has National League South experience with Bath City last season, having been through both Crystal Palace and Ipswich's youth setups. Your thoughts on him, Nigel?
Yeah, for the sake of repeating yourself, again, he's another one that, just looks good. And, what we've seen of him in pre-season, he's got that little bit of explosiveness about him. He's again, low centre of gravity. He comes in off the wing and gets his shot away, or he tries to beat a player and get across in the box, which, people are looking at it on the forum saying, we've got a player from Bath, why are we signing players from teams that finished below us? But again, if you go back further, he was highly rated at Ipswich. Some of the press cuttings, and I think it's Fallen, is it, that was impressed in that for Chelmsford last year and went and signed for Wimbledon. He came through the Ipswich Academy at the same time, and people were saying, what a good player he was, and they're all part of this academy setup, and it's all about finding your level in a team and in a system that suits your style of play, isn't it? Like we've said about the guys that have come from Welling. He only came into Bath sort of February time. Again, a lot of chopping and changing. We know from what Sol came to us about November time, wasn't it? But they got rid of Jerry Gill just after that, had a change, and again, a new manager's coming in. A side that's struggling in the league. All right, they got out of it, but it's very difficult to sort of establish yourself in teams when you're fighting for your life like that. So the fact that he's got into that team and he's helped them survive should say a lot about his sort of fighting qualities and that. Maybe he hasn't got the stats to sort of back that up, but again, like I said before, sometimes you just have to look at your eye and just know if a player's got it or they haven't got it. And sometimes it's about personality as well, where they fit into that dressing room. So someone they've seen some qualities there that they like, and he's coming on trial, and I say he had a good pre-season. He's put in a few good performances. He's put in some not so good performances, but then that's what pre-season's about, isn't it? It's about exactly. It's about trying to iron out those cracks and polishing those diamonds, and hopefully, some of them come true, and we've got another player on our hands.
Sparkle, sparkle. Now, if you're sat there thinking, well, what about everyone else that's in the squad? Don't worry. They've all been covered off in the season preview edition that some people are saying is already available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. We'll just sit and wait here for an hour while you go and get caught up on that. So that's our transfer activity up to date. But before we look at our hosts on Saturday and their summer transfer activity, let's take a quick glance at those who have departed the Stones in recent years, including a couple who made their EFL debuts at the weekend just gone. Left-sided Ryan Galvin made his league debut for Barnet on Saturday in their 2-0 defeat to Fleetwood Town. Midfielder Regan Booty, he was a scorer the last time the Stones began a league season against Hemel Hempstead. just so we keep it Hemel based. We are getting there. He made his debut for Barrow at Chesterfield on Saturday. The hosts run out 1-0 winners. And also striker Bradley Ionvien opened the scoring with a penalty for Peterborough at Cardiff before the host turned it round. Bradley now has over 50 EFL appearances to his name and is nearly in double digits for goals. So Nigel, I mean, that's just 3 of a growing, I was going to say crop, but I'm going to change that to plethora of EFL talents that the Stones have helped nurture. We could be here until the Hemel game on Saturday, reeling more off, couldn't we?
I mean, yeah, exactly. It's, Justin Amaluza's another one that, in that, and Papadopoulos, for the most recent sort of loan, he came on in, I think, the 30th minute for Crawley, and then, they lost 3-0 to Grimsby, and then, as I say, Amaluza came on for Grimsby in that game. So, there's Mason Burstow made his debut for Bolton, and Aaron Collins was playing for MK. It's just when you look back at these players that have come through Maidstone, it just goes to show, we are a club now that's got a reputation of developing these players, and and a lot of them are frequent visitors back to the Maidstone as well, aren't they? We often see them popping up at games. I mean, Regan and Anthony were at the playoff final at Boreham Wood.
Yes.
Along with I think Lamar Reynolds was there as well. So all these players that have had good times at Maidstone, and they just once they leave as a player, like we always say, once a Stone, always a Stone, and then you just become a fan of that club, don't you? So yeah, it's all good, and all the best to them. I hope they sort of get the career in the NFL that the talents deserve.
So 12 players departed from Hemel in the summer. Their keeper Craig King left after 4 seasons with the Tudors. They also lost Jeffro Hansen, Giovanni McGregor, Joe Icefano, Ricardo German, who we knew about of course, Brad House, Brandon Barzy, Kai Brosnan, Alfie Caruli, Oliver Lynch, Ben Tompkins and Bradley Roberts. Some top performers from recent years departing, and some names who obviously fell out of favour in recent months there, Nigel.
Yeah, they got the new manager in halfway through the season, didn't they?
Yes.
We spoke about them in that home game we had here. They were top, and they when we looked at the season review, they were top for more game weeks than any other team in the throughout the rest of the season. But then they plummeted like a stone, didn't they? And
indeed.
Wilkinson lost his job there, and is it Lee Allison come in?
Yeah,
he came in from Hendon, didn't he? And we had Ricardo German come here, but obviously a new manager goes in, wants to bring players from his former team, and new broom sweeps clean, doesn't it? And he's made the changes, and he's now got the pre-season behind him, and he's brought in some of his own players. Some of them would have been by his own choosing. Some of them would have been, like in the case of Brendan Bardi, he's been poached and gone to another club. But it's like all teams at this level, isn't there? There's always a big turnover of players. It's very rarely that if you've got a team that's struggling mid-table, you're not just going to go with same old, are you? You're going to come in and change it up a bit, and maybe a different style of play and a different tactics, and you just get your players in to suit that style of play.
Well, the goalkeepers that they've started with this season, a pair of very experienced goalkeepers all told. Michael Johnson signed after leaving St Albans City, and then Steve Arnold signed from Sutton United. And from where I'm sat, Nigel, it looks like 2 number 1s to me.
Yeah, it does. I mean, we know. We've come across Michael Johnson before, haven't we? And, some from St Albans. And again, St Albans, similar to us with Welling, maybe probably, they've been relegated. And a lot of people said they were too good to go down. A lot of their players have sort of remained in this league. And with the close proximity of St Albans and Hemel Hempstead,
6 miles.
Yeah, it's not surprising that a few of their players have gone there, because it just makes sense, doesn't it? So yeah, another good goalkeeper. And Steve Arnold, as I say, he's very experienced goalkeeper, isn't he?
Very. Whether
he's going in as a little bit of a coaching role and been around the game for a few years now. I remember at Dover a few years ago, when they were like under Chris Kinnear, and so that shows you how long he's been around. And he's just, I suppose he's just sort of looking to pass on that experience that he's got and just be an able backup, Yeah.
So in front of those two, you've got the defenders who've signed up for 25-26. Right back Samuel Adenola re-signed up for this coming season back in March last season. Fellow right-back Devante Stanley signed from Havant Waterlooville in the summer. Captain Kyle Ajayi signed on for the 25-26 season. Both Charlie Rowan and Jordan Thompson signed from Weymouth. So we've all got ex-Weymouth defenders in our realm. Darian Dowrich signed from Cray Wanderers, and most recently Jack Bateson signed after leaving Luton Town. Your thoughts on their back line?
Yeah, I mean, again, a little bit of a mix, change up there, but Kyle Ajayi, the captain, he's one that's highly rated, so they've done well to keep on to him, and
yes.
Being a captain as well, got that done early. So again, as I say, Allison's come in there and identified the players that he wants to keep and made them an offer, and they stayed on. So it's always good to have that little bit of continuity, because you can't just get all new players in, can you? So it's got to be sort of familiar players,
Stick and twist.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's obviously a strong character in the dressing room. Has been made captain, and he's just one of those that leads the line very well. And we know what it's like with defences, isn't we? If you're not going to be that great in attack, you've got to look, keep a clean sheet and not concede the goal. So good addition, and hopefully, like from their point of view, that a few of these signings, sort of as with all the teams, you just don't know how it's going to go, do you? You hope it's going to work, but you never know for sure.
So to the midfield then, and George Williams enters his 4th season at the club. He was the second of a trio who re-signed up back in March. Rio Deal, Kyron Wiltshire and Matthew Achuba all extended their deals during the summer for 25-26. Both Mauro Villette and Jake Gray signed from Hampton and Richmond. Isaiah Noel Williams came in from Matlock, Simpsons fans, Town. Hamza Samakula signed from relegated Aveley, and Jermaine Anderson signed from Woking. So Nigel, it's a mix of some retained players and some new signings, but familiar faces all, really.
Yeah, I mean, George Williams, he's been there for a few seasons now. It always sticks in my mind, his goal, that Bournemouth goal of it. It's like, that lob come shot that had Tom Adler scrambling back towards the goal.
But he's a very strange one statistically, at least, because last season, not a single goal. The season before, he had 12.
Yeah.
So it's very...
Well, he had one here with Gallagher, didn't he, in that game
12,
where it was delayed and went into 90 minutes, had 10 extra minutes of injury time. And I think it was to an injury to one of their players who went off with a head injury. Yeah. And he promptly stepped up with a free kick and put it in the goal. So, I mean... As well, he's an experienced player. He was in the Wales Euro squad, wasn't he, when they got to the semi-finals that year? And obviously he was a young player back in the day, but he's had that sort of that experience. And then Balanta as well. We know what player he is. Boreham Wood and Dagenham, and was it Hampton and Richmond last year? So again, a few players that have got that experience and that know-how around the league. Jake Gray's another one that's always a good player, good solid player at this level, and I think you need that little bit of experience in your team. You get these young players in, and like we said with a few of our players, they've come through the academies, and where it's not necessarily the 3 points that matter. It's all about training, and they're just sort of playing games to sort of just for playing game's sake, really. But when you've got 3 points on the mat, you've got playing fans there, and you're coming, especially in this league this year with all the big teams that are in it. You need those experienced players around you, especially in midfield like that. In the centre of the park, who can just guide you through the tough times. So, I guess that's what they're hoping for with the balance of that. Getting those sort of regulars in there and help calm these sort of players down so they can shine and produce in the big games.
Yeah. Up front for the Tudors this season, Joe White is the final member of that trio I keep banging on about that re-signed for 25-26 back in March. Double barrel retained with Try, Cook, Apaya and Miller Matthews Lewis signing on for 25-26. Kareem Ozayaka signed from Chatham. Oriofo Bello comes in from Wingate and Finchley. Adi Aziz signed from Billericay, and sought after Finlay Wilkinson joined after leaving Barnet via loans last season at Chelmsford and St Albans. Nigel, they might not have Barzi anymore, but they certainly look more than okay to fill the void left by Brandon.
Yeah, that's right. And again, Aziz is the player that we've come up to. I know a few seasons ago, it was our championship winning season, 22.
Might be,
yeah. He was playing for Derby, wasn't he? He ran the full length of the pitch when they beat us in the FA Cup, just to go and celebrate with his fans and goading our fans at the same time. And then, Jack Barham returned the favour in the league game, didn't he? So
I remember that,
what goes around comes around. But yeah, he's been at Billericay. I think he's had his little bit of injury issues. I know he turned up at Sittingbourne.
Yes,
towards the back end of the season.
He
helping them out in their FA Trophy run there. So, another player that knows this level and is looking to get back to, maybe it's one sort of final hurrah. But again, it's a player with experience, and the other strikers there. The young lad that's come from Barnet. He's trying to find his level. He's had a couple of loans at this level, but. To have that little bit of experience beside you in Aziz, hopefully will help them from a Hemel perspective. So, it looks to be an all-round sort of squad. It's one of those sort of squads that they're sort of your archetypal mid-table team, aren't they? And they can go either way. If they have put a good few runs together, they could be sort of knocking on the door of the playoffs, or at the same time, if they get a lot of injuries and suspensions, you could get dragged into that relegation zone or that relegation battle. But yeah, again, like Allman just say, you just got to. It's not until the first 10 games when the league settles down, and we you look at results, and you always get some weird results this time of year, don't you? And so it's just probably an ideal game for both teams, really. Looking forward to it, isn't it? Both teams have got sort of new players in, and players that you hope are going to shine, but you just don't know. And it's just you don't know. Historically, we've always had a lot of goals between us, haven't we? They've always been classic games. I mean, I still think that's probably one of my favourite ever commentary games. That 4-0
Liquid football, anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And that Barham, curler into the top corner, and Dejon Williams standing in front of the Maidstone fans on the little wall that's there at Hemel.
Back at Ramsgate, Jerome? Was Ramsgate?
Yeah, he just signed for Ramsgate this week, didn't he? On Saturday they announced he's signing.
Right.
So he's gone from Dulwich Hamlet to Ramsgate. So it's the only one level below, isn't it? But exactly. It's just memories, isn't it? Memories, and what we'd give to have another sort of day like that. A day in the sun again.
Well, fingers crossed. We'll have a look at that very momentarily, but we'll talk about the Tudors' form first. We've already mentioned it. They were top for the longest time last season in National League South, but a terrible run saw them drop out of contention and finish in mid-table in the end after Allinson come in and steadied Wilkinson's ship. Their pre-season fixtures included home games against Barnet, Enfield and Luton. They had quite a number of them, and a couple of county Cup games to play as well. So they had 6 wins, 2 draws and 1 defeat. They scored 25 in total and only conceded 6. As I mentioned, that included winning the Hertfordshire Senior Cup. So Nigel, how do you rate their chances this season?
Looking at it on paper, they're not obviously amongst the big spenders in the league, and we have got some big teams in the league this year, we've already alluded to. But on the flip side, I don't see them struggling. I think, they brought in a few sort of players that you can see, like rough diamonds kind of thing. A lot of players from the lower league, like you said there, Wingate and Finchley, Havant and Waterlooville. I don't know how good it is to Havant and Waterlooville in the lower league, but
Indeed.
But then they've retained that spine of the team, in the players that we've just talked about, with that experience that they've got. So. On paper, and I know football's not played on paper, but it looks like a well-balanced squad,
So back to those fond memories that Nigel was harping on about mere moments ago. Head-to-head with Hemel, memorable clashes in the past. The first game back after COVID at the start of the title-winning season. The aforementioned liquid football in the return game. A good record in most other recent clashes too, although saying that, 2-1 all draws in the 23-24 season, 6 Stones wins in the last 10, but the last time at Hemel was quite the dour goalless draw. So Nigel, an overwhelmingly positive track record for the Stones.
I don't want to sort of say, but
Go on, say it.
Yeah, but it's just kind of like if you had to pick an ideal fixture to start the season, that would probably be it, wouldn't it? You know, I know we've got Torquay the following week at home, and again that's part of the tough start that we've got. But if you're looking at it, say on paper, you know, two teams that don't really know where they're going. Just that's a good sort of marker to sort of see where we're at.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's positive.
Fingers crossed. So remember, if you can't make it to the game on Saturday, be sure to tune in to myself and himself, Mr. Nigel, from 2:40 on Stones Live. You'll see us on the hot take and then hear us on the highlights once they go online. Some admin reaching us. Craig Fagan has a touchline ban for the Hemel Hempstead match after his post-match altercation, shall we say, at Chelmsford back in January. So justice has been swiftly applied by the FA as usual. And also confirmation that Maidstone's women's season will kick off in the FA Cup on September the 7th at Oxted and District. Details on the website and socials for the exact time and location nearer the time. So like Lamine Yamal at a birthday party, hi ho, it's off to work we go. The last time the Stones started a league campaign against Hemel Hempstead, they won on opening day and then went on to win the league. He is hoping for a similar outcome on both fronts once more as we finally get to the start of the 25-26 campaign. Our thanks to you all out there as ever for watching or listening to the latest preview. Like and subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get the podcasts. Just search for the Maidstone United podcast. See or hear you for our next preview ahead of the first league home game of the season. Oh, it sounds good to say that. And that's against Torquay United, no less. And as always,
Come on, you Stones!